Hello everyone. Welcome back. Today, we've got some crucial news you don't want to miss. Let's dive right into the top financial headlines and break down what's happening. Investing report. Tariffs and taxes key issues for stocks as US election looms, Wells Fargo. With the US election heading into the final stretch, investing has highlighted a key insight from Wells Fargo's recent report. For capital markets, this election is about much more than political posturing. While the public might tune in for the drama, investors are zeroed in on how the results could drive gains or losses in their portfolios. According to Wells Fargo, tariffs and taxes have now become critical factors for the stock market, especially in sectors like retail. Tariffs and the retail sector's reaction. Wells Fargo's report sheds light on how tariff policies, in particular, could make or break retail stocks depending on which candidate wins. Former President Trump has proposed tariffs on most imports, ranging from 10 to 20%, and specifically, up to a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. This idea has already raised concerns for companies that depend heavily on Chinese imports, as they may face significant costs that either get passed to consumers or absorbed internally, both of which could impact share performance. On the other hand, a Harris-led administration would likely continue the Biden administration's approach, which increased tariffs on products like steel and aluminum, while keeping a steadier hand on broader tariffs. This continuity might offer investors more stability, though any new tariff hikes could still shake things up, especially in international relations with China. Tax policy and its market impact. Wells Fargo analysts caution that any tariff escalation could strain international relations further, particularly with China. Meanwhile, on taxes, Harris has proposed raising the corporate tax rate to 28%, reversing much of the tax relief set by the Trump administration. This tax hike could pose challenges for big corporations, but it could also benefit smaller businesses, thanks to Harris's plan to expand the small business tax credit from $5,000 to $50,000. If passed, this move might shift the competitive landscape, especially in retail and food services. Personal tax cuts and spending power. For individual taxpayers, both candidates have put forward policies that could impact consumer spending, particularly for lower-income households. Harris wants to increase the earned income tax credit and reinstate elements of the rescue plan, like expanded child tax credits. Trump, on the other hand, has suggested ideas like removing taxes on tips, overtime, and even Social Security. Wells Fargo notes that these types of cuts would likely boost disposable income for lower-income consumers who typically have a high propensity to spend, which could be good news for stocks in retail and food service. Stimulus and sector outlook. If a stimulus measure is rolled out, stocks like Walmart and discount chains that cater to low-income shoppers might benefit from increased consumer spending. Over time, corporate tax changes could have a direct impact on stock earnings, with some analysts predicting that Harris's proposed tax increases could reduce profits by as much as 10% for certain companies. Meanwhile, Trump's preference for lower taxes would likely provide a smaller but positive bump to earnings. The broader economic policies at play. Beyond taxes and tariffs, this election's outcome could impact housing, labor, and energy policies, all of which ripple out to affect consumer spending and business profitability. This report from Investing helps bring the core economic differences between the two candidates into sharper focus, highlighting how each could influence the market and, in turn, everyday life. Compared to watching political drama from the sidelines, this kind of economic analysis may provide investors with the insights they need to prepare for the possible outcomes, making it more relevant to our lives than ever. The second major news I'm sharing with you today: Israel has carried out a retaliatory strike on Iran, which has caught widespread attention. This story has two main reports, and we'll break down both. First, the Wall Street Journal ran with the headline, "Israel strikes back at Iran, further expanding the war in the Middle East." They reported that early Saturday, Israel hit various military targets in Iran, fulfilling Prime Minister Netanyahu's promise to strike back for a missile attack 3 weeks prior. That initial attack had already sparked fears of a regional war. Israel's latest strikes focused on missile production facilities, with the military confirming that their retaliation is complete, signaling an end to the offensive for now. Explosions were reported in Tehran and the provinces of Khuzestan and Elam. A U.S. official, speaking anonymously, said that the Biden administration has been working with Israel on a proportionate response and has urged Iran to avoid further escalation. Other Western leaders echoed this sentiment, including UK Prime Minister Starmer, who acknowledged Israel's right to self-defense while calling for restraint to prevent the conflict from spiraling. Iran's response, or lack thereof, is critical. If they escalate, this could broaden the conflict, but if they keep a low profile, it might help stabilize the situation in the Middle East. According to the Wall Street Journal, Iranian media reported that 2 soldiers died in the strikes, but no major damage was done, and Iran's oil and nuclear facilities were unaffected. Official Iranian sources played down the attack scale and hinted that recent warnings to Israel may have worked as a deterrent. This stance signals that Iran might be aiming to de-escalate the situation rather than fuel further conflict. Good news for international markets. Saudi Arabia's response was interesting too. They condemned the strikes but didn't name Israel directly, while urging both sides to show restraint. Meanwhile, Jordan openly assisted Israel by allowing airspace access for the strike, showing how regional alliances can play out subtly. Despite talk about Israel's conflicts with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran potentially triggering a larger Middle Eastern war, that risk seems low. Saudi Arabia and other Islamic nations are more aligned with keeping Iran in check and would likely support Israel indirectly, especially given Saudi concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions. This story also connects to previous reporting from the Wall Street Journal, which highlighted Israel's strategy to resolve these issues before the US election. Israel wants to eliminate uncertainties. Netanyahu has to consider Trump's and Harris's very different stances on Middle Eastern policies. For instance, Trump has encouraged aggressive action, like targeting Iran's nuclear sites, which could put Netanyahu in a challenging position if Trump wins again. On the flip side, a Harris victory might mean more restrictions on Israel's actions. Netanyahu's aim appears to be minimizing risks on all sides. Interestingly, Netanyahu timed this attack for early Saturday, essentially during the global market's off hours. It's a calculated move, showing his understanding of potential impacts on international financial markets and his intent to avoid adding market stress. Iran's actions have been similarly brief, aiming not to create prolonged market turmoil. In addition to the recent events between Israel and Iran, a significant incident unfolded on Iran's eastern border. According to Reuters, 10 Iranian border guards were killed in a brutal clash near the country's southeastern border with Afghanistan and Pakistan. This area has long been a hotspot for conflicts involving Iran's security forces, Sunni militants, and drug traffickers. The attack has heightened local tensions, drawing major attention from Iranian media and sparking outrage across the country. Iranian reports suggest that the attackers were suspected Sunni militants who ambushed the guards along the troubled borders. This region has a history of violence, with similar incidents frequently occurring in Sistan and Baluchistan province, an area that not only deals with security threats but also drug trafficking routes due to its location. It's also home to a Sunni minority that has faced long-standing tensions with the predominantly Shiite Iranian government. Because of this, the area often experiences instability and is vulnerable to attacks like this one. Interestingly, some sources are linking the group behind this latest attack to a Sunni militant faction that's known for targeting Chinese workers in Pakistan's Balochistan region. This connection highlights how these militant groups operate across borders, especially in areas with rugged, hard-to-monitor terrain. These groups often capitalize on border regions for their operations, posing a security threat not only to Iran but to neighboring countries as well. This incident has somewhat overshadowed the fallout from Israel's recent strikes on Iran. While Israel's attacks reportedly resulted in minimal casualties, this border clash has led to a greater loss of life for Iran, making it a more prominent story domestically. Many Iranians feel a stronger emotional response to these deaths, as it highlights an ongoing threat closer to home that has tragically claimed the lives of those defending the country's borders. For Iran, the back-to-back incidents, Israel's strikes from the west and this militant attack from the east, are stark reminders of the security challenges it faces on multiple fronts. Given the rising tensions both inside and outside the country, it's no surprise that the Iranian government is under pressure to respond. However, Iran's next steps could hinge on balancing these internal and external threats without escalating the situation further. Finally, let's focus on the biggest political news of the day in the US, Trump's interview with major podcast host Rogan. Today's headline story in American politics is Trump's interview with one of the country's most influential political podcasters, Rogan. For those who aren't familiar, the US podcasting scene is huge, and this time around, presidential candidates seem to be paying more attention to podcasts than traditional TV interviews. Right now, two political podcasts dominate the landscape. Rogan's show is number one, while another big one is hosted by a guy who's often seen wearing a black beanie on YouTube. Interestingly, he's recently been in hot water over allegations he accepted $10 million from Russia to help spread pro-Russia content. Now, he's shifting away from YouTube to a different social media platform. Back to Rogan, he's got a conservative leaning but supports some democratic views, so hardcore conservatives sometimes criticize him too. Either way, Rogan's podcast is one of the loudest and most influential voices in America. Bloomberg covered Trump's appearance with the headline, "Trump Talks Xi, Tariffs and Aliens in Freewheeling Rogan Podcast." The subheadline? Republican nominee sits for 3 hours with popular host. You can see how serious he is taking a full 3 hours for this interview during such a competitive time in the election. In the interview, Trump shared a ton. For starters, he mentioned he'd consider replacing income tax with tariffs, admitted he'd made mistakes with some top appointments, and hinted he might reveal information on aliens, yes, aliens, in the future. We've narrowed down Bloomberg's highlights into 6 main talking points from the interview, starting with biggest mistakes in office. When asked about his biggest mistake during his first term, Trump said he regretted appointing certain people. Specifically, he called out former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and National Security Advisor John Bolton, both of whom became major Trump critics. Trump's favorite word, tariffs. Trump mentioned multiple times that tariffs are his most beautiful word, and he sees them as key to his populist economic agenda. He's all about extending tax cuts, introducing new tax breaks, and slapping tariffs on foreign goods to boost American manufacturing. At one point, he even said tariffs are more beautiful than love and that they're a way to make America wealthy again. Unexpected call from Google's CEO. During the interview, Trump got a call from Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai. Trump put the call on speaker, and Pichai told him how people were suddenly obsessed with a photo of Trump in a Pennsylvania McDonald's. It seemed like Pichai was just trying to butter Trump up by saying it was one of Google's most important moments, but without adding much substance. Many saw it as Google trying to cozy up to Trump. Praise for Xi Jinping. Trump also praised China's President Xi Jinping, calling him a brilliant man who controls China's 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. While Trump doesn't necessarily agree with everything Xi does, he respects his strong control over the country. This is consistent with Trump's usual take on leaders like Xi and even Putin. Stories about Kim Jong-un. Talking about his good rapport with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, Trump shared a moment where he urged Kim to slow down on nuclear development and suggested building condos along the North Korean coast instead. Trump likes to emphasize his unique relationship with Kim, turning it into a story that captures people's interest. Claims about 2020 election. Trump continued to insist that the 2020 election was stolen, prompting Rogan to ask for evidence. Trump replied that the media didn't fairly report on issues like Hunter Biden's laptop and illegal pandemic voting changes. Rogan agreed with Trump's general stance on election issues but pushed back when Trump praised the polio vaccine. Finally, Trump dropped an intriguing teaser, saying if he gets elected again, he'll reveal the truth about aliens. He claimed to have asked 3 or 4 unnamed officials, who assured him, "Sir, there's something there." Trump didn't give any specifics, instead suggesting, if you want to know about aliens, vote for me. Here's my takeaway: Trump's masterful at grabbing attention. In this interview, he didn't lay out a detailed campaign plan. Instead, he threw out one headline-grabbing topic after another, from aliens to tariffs. His strategy seems to work across the board. Whether people love him or hate him, he stays in the spotlight. This reminds me of 2016, when CNN later admitted they'd underestimated Trump's media power. Their constant focus on him actually amplified his reach, helping him more than hurting him. Even though liberal media is now more cautious about giving Trump the spotlight, his interview with Rogan shows he's still got that magic for creating buzz. It's clear Trump knows how to make headlines that people care about, and let's be real, most folks would rather listen to spicy stories about aliens than dry political policy talk. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.